Chamber of Commerce and the International Real Estate Federation. He also became a member of the Stanford Sea Transformation Network after completing the transformation program in 2017. He is the managing director of Prinex Properties Limited, an indigenous real estate investment and development company that delivers sustainable investment returns through superb product knowledge and execution. In its 10 years of existence, Prinex has delivered over 35 investment apartments with another 100 units currently being built. Outside of his work life, he enjoys traveling and networking with great minds. He is also a southpaw tennis player, a calligraphy artist, loving husband, and caring father. Please join me as we welcome architect Tolu. Bawa.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I feel very honored to be here this afternoon. A special greeting to my senior colleagues, one of my lecturers and students here at Mnia. Good afternoon, sir. I feel very honored to stand before you this afternoon to make my presentation. Yes, so Tolu is my name. I'm an architect. I graduated 2005 from the University of Lagos. It's an honor actually to be here to talk about Lagos and evolving organism. So, I'm an indigenous of Lagos. Right? I was born here, and I recall as a kid when my dad was still in the public service. We used to live in Kogi, and it was at number 3 Elaborate Street, very precisely. And I recall very clearly back then that it was just one single house, right? A duplex in the middle of about 6 plots of land. I think each plot was about 1 acre or something. And of course, my dad as a GM was as his living quarters. And I recall when I got the theme and evolving organism, I started to recall that back then it was just one tiny house in the middle of such a big land. And then maybe at some point we had the boys' quarter and then one guest chalet. But if you go to Ikoyi today, what do you find? You find high rises, minimum 3-4 floors. Right? A duplex in the middle of about 6 plots of land. I think each plot was about 1 acre or something. And of course, my dad as the GM was, he was assigned that as his living quarters. And I recall, because when I got, the theme, an evolving organism, I started to recall, that back then, it was just one tiny house in the middle of such a big land. And then maybe at some point we had the boys' quarter and then one guest chalet. But if you go to Ikoyi today, what do you find? You find high rises, minimum 3-4 floors. Then the more aggressive developers would go maybe 8 to 10 floors. That's what Lagos is becoming. We all understand that Lagos is a former capital of the country. And I think based on this, the government had made so much effort to put up the necessary infrastructure to keep it a befitting capital of one of the biggest countries in Africa. So very quickly, I would go into my presentation slides. So this just shows you Tinubu Square back then and what it is today, right? We can look at urbanization and the rapid growth of the city of Lagos, considering some very strong key factors, right? The first, I would say, is human population, because land is just land. It's not a city unless you start to consider the people on it, right? The people on it, the economic activities that go on. And what we have here is a bit of a statistics showing how many people are in Lagos? Currently, we're over 20 million people living in the state, close to about 25 million. And there's another data that also shows us that about close to 2,000 people come into the city of Lagos on a daily basis. As a former speaker said during his presentation, that the situation we have is that the infrastructure on ground is not growing according to the population rise. Now, when we talk about urbanization and the rapid growth of the city of Lagos, I said the first to consider is human population. The second, of course, is infrastructure. I think that Lagos has benefited so much from past governments, in that it was a capital of Nigeria. Quite a lot of roads were built. I remember growing up, Carter Bridge, Third Mainland Bridge. I think as at the time I was in primary school, Third Mainland Bridge was only ending at Yaba. And then during the IBB regime, it was stretched all the way to Iyanoworo. So these are the benefits of, the governance. When I say, the government's inputs into infrastructural development in the state. And I think that's one of the major attractions, because when people come into Lagos, they take advantage of the infrastructure, and they get to go on with their commercial activities, and of course they make money from that. The next is real estate developments. So I'm an architect, but over the years I've come into real estate as a business, right? And the truth about it is infrastructure, right, promotes real estate development. We developers don't like to go into areas where you don't have good roads, you don't have electricity, power, or water supply. So these are factors that make Lagos State a vibrant city and an evolving organism. Governance, of course, very, very critical. Of course, as we know, governance and its policies, these are processes of managing the integration and interaction of these elements of urbanization in order to maintain efficiency, sustainability, and optimization. Then lastly, the economic opportunities that are available within the composition of the land and the infrastructure. So if we look at infrastructure, this is a Papa Port. A while ago and today, we can see the influx of containers coming up there on that picture by the right side. This is then and now Victoria Island, right? Then Carter Bridge, this was in the 1960s, and then this is what it's looking like today. Of course, these are all infrastructural developments that have happened in the state over time. Real estate developments and buildings. As I said, there's really no growth in a city if you don't have real estate developments coming up. So this is also taking a look at some very recent developments around Victoria Island and Ikoyi precisely. Governance and policy, as I said, for Lagos State, this is the Lagos State themes, right? And the last that has been ongoing in terms of implementation in the last 3 to 5 years. So I think the government has a lot in its, a very strong part to play in making sure that the integration and interaction of these elements of urbanization is properly managed in order to maintain efficiency and also sustainability, and of course, revenue generation. We all understand that this is where the state makes their money from. So economic opportunities that are available within the composition of land and infrastructure. So Lagos is not just made up of landmass. There's also water bodies. We have the Atlantic on one side, and then we also have the lagoon. And we can take a look at the Makoko community, which is very, very locally developed. There's quite a number of commercial activities going on there, fishing, also a lot of timber activities due to the sawmill that is along that strip of the lagoon shoreline in Lagos.
So at the end of the day, when we look at the economic activities, we try to understand that this is a significant factor. A lot of people come into Lagos because they know that when they get into Lagos, there would always be opportunities to make money. As a real estate developer, I'm particularly very much interested in what's going on further down on the Lekki axis, where we have the Lekki deep sea ports coming up. And I can categorically say that in the last 3 to 5 years, the value of land in that particular side of Lagos has gone up by almost about 500%, right? So I've just examined the factors that make up urbanization, the factors that influence urbanization in Lagos State. Let's look at Lagos today. I'm taking a cue from the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? But before I go into the good, let's talk about what is great, right? What's happened in Lagos today that is really great. As a developer, one of the most exciting developments for me is the Eco Atlantic, right? Now, this is about 10,000 square kilometers of land, you know, the whole line of where the former Bar Beach was, all the way down to the Lekki right side, when you look at Lekki Phase 1. In its optimal capacity, these developments would house about 250,000 residents and maybe close to 400,000 workers in its commercial arena, right? This is one great thing that's happened to Lagos. Please, a round of applause for the Lagos State government and all the stakeholders that have tried to put this together. The Dangote refinery is also another major infrastructural development going on around the Lekki Trade Freight Zone, you know, further down in Lekki. In that particular area of Lagos, there's also the seaport coming up, and there's also the airport coming up as well. Another great thing is the government's efforts in trying to decongest our roads. So in the last few years, Lamata has made significant effort to make sure that the Blue Line Rail has, there's been a soft launch of this already, and I have learned that in its optimal capacity, it will be moving, say, between 250,000 to 400,000 passengers on a daily basis. The independent power project. As developers today, we can now, you know, approach the government to pick up licenses and see how we can start to generate power in small silos to power our, you know, residential real estate coming up around the state. So I think this is a very important and significant milestone on that great things that have happened in Lagos. The good. We've talked about the great. So the good, on the Lekki axis, it might interest all of us to know that the Lekki axis is one of the fastest growing real estate axis in the world, right? Here I have just shown a picture of Northern Foreshore Estate, one of the most successful developments in that area. We also have the landmark village around Oniru, just very close to us here. And then, of course, this is something we did in Prindex Properties, Discovery Gardens at Igwe for a mini estate of about 40 houses, right? Other things that's, you know, that we need to note as well under the good things that have happened in Lagos is the government agencies, as I mentioned in my earlier slide, that are making efforts to monitor and control how different elements of the urbanized space are working with each other. Of course, Loma is in charge of controlling waste disposal. So many years ago, we could, you know, we all experienced how bad it was in Lagos. You go along Ikorodu Road, there's fields everywhere. But I think over the years, they've been able to revamp, you know, that organization to deliver excellent results. Of course, LASMA, for the better part of it, they do a good job. I'm sure one or two of us here have run into one or two LASMA troubles before, but let's still give them a round of applause all the same. Lagos State Waterways, Lagos State Waterways is also doing a lot of work. I don't know how many of us here, you know, have gone through the ferry service, But I know some people that on a daily basis, they move from Ikorodu to Lekki via the waterways, and they don't even bother about going on bus. And within 20, 30 minutes, they are at work. So these are part of the good things that have happened in Lagos, that's happening in Lagos today. The bad, traffic congestion, as we all know. Of course, the rising sea level, most of us living on the Lekki axis, whenever it rains and the floods are very heavy, we'll start to worry about if the flood is going to get into our compound or if it's going to get into our house. And I think that this is where we as architects need to stamp our footprints, in terms of professional work. When we are taking levels and when we're trying to design these buildings, it's very, very important to consider the environment where we're developing or designing, right? This is a major concern in Lagos today, especially for people on the coastal area. The Apapa gridlock, this has been going on for years. For most of us that live on the mainland side of Lagos, we don't want to come to Apapa. If you look at the statistics from the real estate angle, land prices have dropped significantly in Apapa. And the truth about it is that a lot of people have moved out, and this is still there, it's still persistent. So this is one of the things that we're not happy about. Flood on the Lekki axis, I just mentioned that right now. Also, the NSAS movements saw destruction of a lot of infrastructure in Lagos. This was the High Court building in Igboshere. It's under redevelopment as we speak. Building collapse. I don't think I want to say much on this because I think quite a number of speakers have touched on this matter earlier today. But of course, this is something that is giving professionals of the built environment a lot of headache. We don't have anything to do with these buildings at Prindex Properties. All our projects, we've never had an incident of collapse before. But whenever this happens, we get phone calls. Oh, Tolu, what's happening? This is not giving, good, credit to your industry. How are we going to trust, what you guys are doing? How are we going to continue pushing funds to your development? It's a big headache and it needs to be checked. So this is part of what is one of the ugly things happening in the urban space in Lagos. Now, very quickly, as I wrap up, I would consider some key factors, some very strong points that we need to take away as we look into the future of Lagos. I think the first thing is governance, right? So I'm not a politician and I'm not totally siding any political party. But what I think is that the stability that Lagos State has enjoyed over the years is only simply because there's been a ruling party moving, sustainability and development programs from one, tenure to the next. Should we have a change in political party, we may experience something totally different. So we need to take note of that. We need to have the government make sure to, continue their sustainable development programs. We as professionals also need to partner with governments because sometimes they are not totally in touch with the reality of what's going on out there. I speak as a real estate developer, and one instance I can give you is we operate majorly on the mainland area of Lagos and then sometimes on the Lekki axis. So we buy land sometimes, through investors' funds for 2,000, 300,000 naira per square meter. And you are told that on a parcel of land of 2,000 square meters that you've bought for maybe close to 500 million naira, you can only build 4 to 6 units of houses. I mean, how are you going to break even? By the time you look at it, the end price you are going to sell is so high that you probably won't even find anybody to come and ask you, oh, what are you doing here? So I think we need to foster that relationship. I want to commend the effort of NIA Lagos chapter, because I know in recent times, they've tried to keep up that relationship with the Lagos state government. But we need to do more of that so that sensitization can happen and then we can see a lot more collaboration. Also, there's some, sorry, 1 minute, yes. The Fourth Mainland Bridge is one major infrastructural developments coming up and is being, pushed by the Lagos state government. Of course, we all understand what this is going to do. It's going to change significantly. It's going to bring, first of all, a lot of commercial opportunities. It's going to link the Lekki axis with the Ikorodu axis. That means, in reality, it's going to decongest, the traffic on this side of Lekki. Also, land values around those areas are going to go up, and we're going to see more activities around commerce. So these are one of the strong elements looking into the future. The Dangote refinery is a big deal, also coming up in the Lekki Free Trade Zone. And also, in terms of housing development, this case study here is something that's happened in China. It houses over 20,000 occupants, delivered sometime in 2013. I think this is where we're going in Lagos, because land is no longer in production, and it is not really easy for us to build on water. Yes, I know there has been attempts by architects like Mr. Architect Kunle Adeyemi, an international architect of Nle Architects, to try to prefer solutions on building on water. But people are going to keep asking us professionals that you that are still building on land and your buildings are collapsing, who is going to buy the houses you build on water, right? So for me, I think that we need to work towards this. We need to work with the body of engineers to see how within the limited land mass we have, we can develop structures that can give us more housing units to be able to close up that housing gap. All right, so before I wrap up, I also want to talk about something very, very important, which is that in our last 10 years of operations at Pre-Index Properties, something has kept on, bothering me as a professional, which is that we as architects are not really looking into the space of real estate developments. Yes, a lot of us are into the practice of architecture, which is fine. But the business of architecture is real estate development. And unfortunately, if we Google today, right now, if we Google the top 10 real estate developers in the country, I doubt very much that 40% of them are led by the built environment industry professionals. Some of them are bankers, some of them are lawyers. I don't think that should be the case. I think we need to come back into that space and own that space. It's very critical, because why would we allow lawyers and bankers take over our profession and then they not engage me and you and be paying us 500,000 naira or 1 million naira for design when we are actually leaders of the built environment? We come for seminars, we come for conferences every time, and we hear all this talk, and nobody ever talks about what is the next step to take. I'm personally proposing that the next step to take is to sit down and even within the body of the NIA, start to look for how we can aggregate developers in this space to give us a stronger footing in the industry. Thank you very much for your time. I'll take your comments and questions at this point.
Thank you very much, Architect Tolu Bawa.
Thank you. A pleasure being here.
Pleasure having you here. So we'll have a quick Q&A session handled by the chairman of the session. Please don't forget that you can also ask your questions by logging on to the website nilc.org/socials and type your questions, and we'll have them here. But you can also ask your questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolu Bawa, for your presentation. So I'll open the floor for a couple of questions. We have just about 10 minutes or less to ask questions and have Mr. Bawala respond. So the floor is open. Somebody's hand behind you there. Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Bola Gidado. I'm a real estate practitioner. The last point that Mr. Bawala made, I think, is the most poignant of the points of his discussion about professionals being spearheading construction and practice in the real estate industry and ecosystem, basically. It's a large industry and it's really large, and it's how did they say it? It brings a lot of money to people. So I don't know why practitioners are not engaging in it. And I would think that maybe part of the reason is funding. He had mentioned that bankers and lawyers and maybe one or two other, even laymen in quotes, are people spearheading development and are called developers now, you know, and I would assume that maybe part of the reason is funding. Maybe architects need to look inward and see if they could come together, maybe synergize, come together, partner and do things if funding is the problem for them. But it would be nice if we could have architects, builders and professionals actually spearheading so that we can have less and less of the kind of building collapses and ugly parts of Lagos that we've seen. Thank you.
Yes, another hand is up here in front. Professor Okedele.
She says 1 minute. I will take 30 seconds. Now, I'm happy for the presentation.
Sorry, sir. That's because another speaker is going to join us virtually at 1:30. Okay. So no. We really are constrained.
30 seconds. She gave me 1 minute. You have taken, 20 seconds out of me. Now, I want us to learn from what we discussed yesterday concerning, the development of our larger land. Lagos is megapolitan, consisting of metropolitans, cities, districts, before you come to individuals. Now, the last speaker talks of development of, but this development, we have professional conflicts that do not let us have long-term, policy making. That the medium-term policy making will work within the context. That, the district that is, immediate will work with before the action plans. Real estate, there are action plans. But what are they working on? Do we have master plans that are active, that are, can be that can go into the long-term solution that depends on what we call data, that is updated, or data that is long-term. These are few things that we say that, yes, water level is coming up. Why? Because we are landfilling. We shouldn't be. We should respect the nature. Water level should be respected. Let us, develop on the natural water level. And the only way by which we can do that is to respect ourselves, all the professionals in the built environment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Apart from landfilling, I think also that global warming is contributing to the water level increasing. There's a question online. What is the real issue around the floating school in Makoko by Kunle Adeyemi? Why did the discussion suddenly die? That's for Mr. Bawala, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you very much once again. Bola Gidado, thank you for your question or your comment around funding. So I'll take Bola's question first before I make a comment on Kunle Adeyemi. Well, this is what I say, which is still if I leave you with anything today, is that we need to think about how we can come into the real estate space. I've done my research and I've realized that there isn't really so many built environment professionals running the real estate companies in Nigeria, right? A lot of them come out of, either banks or lawyers. So my annoyance with lawyers is that you're an Arsenal fan, there's Man U on this side, and then there's a referee in between. So the referee is meant to take charge of the match. Lawyers are referees. So because they know so much about the match, they are now playing the match themselves, right? So I want us to understand something. In terms of funding, money chases value. So let's imagine that we have a team of architect developers within the NIA. It's not possible that somebody who is not of the built environment as a professional would send a proposal to a bank and it will beat our proposal. It's not possible. We need to stop working in silos. Yes, there's practice of architecture, but if we collaborate together, I think those funders that are looking for where to put their money would pay some attention to us, because an optimized design will give better ROI. And at the end of the day, they will